Thousands gathered at the Berlin Wall, a forbidding structure that had separated East and West Germany for nearly about 3 decades.
Pathway of cobbles along the streets of Berlin, because where now there are stones, there used to be a wall.
Imagine waking up one morning to discover your family on one side of a divided city, with armed guards ensuring you'll never see them again. When the Berlin Wall rose overnight in 1961, thousands of people faced this brutal reality. Let's dive into the untold facts about one of the most well-known barriers in history. It evolved into a representation of oppression, separation, and despair that went beyond concrete and barbed wire. Walls have been constructed historically to demarcate boundaries, uphold authority, and restrict travel. Some were designed to fend off invading armies, such as the Great Wall of China. Others, such as Britain's Hadrian's Wall, controlled the boundaries of an empire. However, few historical barriers have been as potent symbolically or politically as the Berlin Wall. The Berlin Wall, a physical and conceptual barrier that separated East and West Berlin and symbolized the Cold War conflict between communism and democracy, was constructed in 1961. It became one of the most infamous representations of oppression in the 20th century, severing families and limiting liberties. However, what actually took place behind this notorious wall? In what ways did it alter people's lives, economy, and world politics? And what caused its sharp decline in 1989? Germany was left in ruins following World War II, 1939 to 1945. And the Soviet Union and the Allies, the United States, United Kingdom, and France, split it up quickly. With the help of Western Europe and the United States, West Germany, also known as the Federal Republic of Germany, or FRG, developed into a capitalist democracy. The Soviet Union was in charge of the communist nation known as East Germany, German Democratic Republic, or GDR. Berlin was split, even though it was all in East Germany. The Democratic Allies ruled over West Berlin. The Soviet Union had a communist effect on East Berlin. Millions of East Germans moved to West Berlin between 1949 and 1961 in search of greater personal freedoms and economic possibilities. The East German administration made a radical step as a result of the brain drain's devastating effects on the country's economy. To tighten East Germany's hold on its people, the Berlin Wall was constructed in stages. East German troops and construction workers started building barbed wire barriers around the East-West Berlin border on the evening of August 12th to 13th, 1961. This first building was a hastily constructed barricade intended to stop the huge migration of East Germans to the west right away. The barbed wire was replaced in a matter of days with a 10-foot-tall concrete wall that was strengthened with metal fencing and wooden barriers. In order to make it simpler for guards to identify escape attempts, the East German authorities constructed a second parallel wall by 1962, establishing the notorious Death Strip, a 100-yard-wide area covered in sand. The Berlin Wall developed into an advanced, nearly impenetrable structure during the course of the following 20 years. The wall's ultimate design, known as Grenzmauer 75, was completed by 1975. It included reinforced concrete slabs that are 12 feet high and have a smooth top to make climbing impossible. More than 300 watchtowers, each manned by armed guards with instructions to fire to death, tripwires, floodlights, attack dogs, and anti-vehicle trenches. Some places have automatic machine guns. West Berlin was totally cut off from East Germany by the 96-mile-long Berlin Wall. Before its abrupt collapse in 1989, it was a symbol of the Cold War division for almost 30 years. The world was shocked to see Berlin, which had once been a dynamic, energetic city, turn into a fortified prison. The construction of the Berlin Wall took time. It developed into an almost impenetrable barrier over the course of the following 20 years, intended to thwart any kind of escape. Barbed wire and wooden barricades were used in 1961 to 1962, and a 10-foot-tall concrete wall with guard posts was used in 1962 to 1965. A reinforced concrete barrier with guard towers was in place from 1965 until 1975. The ultimate version, which was constructed between 1975 and 1989, was a 12-foot-tall wall with a heavily militarized death strip behind it and smooth pipe on top to deter climbing. The death strip is a sand-filled buffer zone where footsteps can be seen. Guard towers, more than 300 watchtowers with snipers and searchlights installed. Automatic machine guns, There were tripwire-triggered guns in some places around the wall. Dogs and barriers. To stop vehicles from crossing, attack dogs in trenches patrolled the area. Berliners continued to try risky escapes using hot air balloons, subterranean tunnels, and falsified documents in spite of these safeguards. For hundreds of families, the Berlin Wall served as an emotional and psychological jail in addition to a physical barrier. Berliners awoke to a divided city with loved ones stuck on opposing sides after it was built overnight on August 13, 1961. Many were abruptly unable to return to East Berlin after working or visiting relatives in West Berlin. Wives and husbands were split up, parents were separated from their kids, and elderly family members were left behind because they couldn't cross the border. Although some persons tried to respond by letters, many messages were either prohibited or never delivered in East Germany due to stringent government surveillance. Desperate for any indication of their loved ones, others turned to standing close to the wall and shouting or waving across the gap. Both East and West Berlin suffered grave economic and social repercussions when the Berlin Wall was built in 1961. The sudden division of the formerly united metropolis caused severe disruptions to Berliners' daily life and an economic crisis in the East. Every day before the wall, hundreds of thousands of East Berliners would travel to West Berlin in search of employment, where salary was much greater. A critical labor force was cut off by the abrupt border closure, which resulted in a serious labor shortage in the West. Caused the economy of East Germany, which was already having difficulties under Soviet-style socialism, to worsen, and left thousands of East Berliners without jobs because they could no longer commute to their jobs in the West. Strict economic controls were put in place by the East German government to offset the loss of labor, driving people into state-run employment. Nevertheless, this had little effect on raising living conditions. And as people looked for products that were exclusively found in the West, a flourishing illicit market developed. Families that used to get together on the weekends were abruptly separated. The disruption of roads, train lines, and public areas altered how people moved around the city. There was widespread dissatisfaction and a drop in morale as a result of many East Berliners feeling confined. West Berlin, on the other hand, attracted foreign help and investment as a symbol of Western affluence. East Berliners' discontent and desire to flee, despite the potentially fatal risks, grew as the economic divide between the two sections of the city became glaringly obvious. The Berlin Wall's economic and social divisions persisted until 1989, when the city was reunited and was able to recover from decades of coerced separation. East Berlin, life grew oppressive. East German secret police, known as the Stasi, kept a careful eye on the citizens in order to spot any indication of dissension. Even discussing escape or showing appreciation for the West may land you in jail. Families endured this forced separation for almost 30 years until the wall was ultimately torn down in 1989, bringing loved ones back together after years of agonizing separation. More than 5,000 East Germans managed to flee despite the fatal dangers. At least 140 people were killed. Nevertheless, the majority of them were shot by border guards. Among the most daring escapes were two brothers who paddled to West Berlin over a river on an air mattress in 1962. 57 individuals were saved when a crew constructed a tunnel beneath the wall in 1964. In 1989, a family from East Germany constructed a homemade hot air balloon and soared to liberty. Every escape attempt fueled anti-communist sentiment around the world by exposing the cruelty of the East German regime. Communist regimes in Eastern Europe started to wane by the late 1980s as a result of Soviet reform programs headed by Mikhail Gorbachev's perestroika and glasnost policies, growing public opposition, and economic difficulties. The East German government abruptly announced loosened travel restrictions on November 9, 1989. The gates were unlocked by overwhelmed guards, and hundreds of Berliners rushed to the wall and used bulldozers and hammers to smash it down. The Berlin Wall was demolished by October 1990 when Germany was formally reunited. Despite being constructed for distinct purposes, the US-Mexico border wall and the Berlin Wall have similar features. The goal of the US-Mexico border wall is to prevent unauthorized crossings, but the Berlin Wall was constructed to jail a population. Both, meanwhile, highlight moral questions regarding how countries manage their borders and reveal profound political conflicts. Are walls the answer? In the end, the Berlin Wall collapsed, demonstrating that human willpower is unaffected by walls. Before the political system itself fell apart, people risked their lives, dug tunnels, and discovered ways around it. Despite having a distinct goal, The US-Mexico border wall likewise has to deal with political difficulties, human rights issues, and bypasses. The question still stands: do walls only postpone the inevitable, or can they actually resolve geopolitical problems? Please share your opinions in the comments section, like this video, and subscribe for more.